I struggle to summarize books that I didn't enjoy because I'm like, it's about, who cares? What's up everyone, my name is Kelsey, welcome back to my channel. Today we are talking about all of the books I read in August. And we're trying to do this fast because there's Browns game in 20 minutes and I'm supposed to be there. Total in August I read 12 books and all 12 of them were adult books, which is strange. And it was a great reading month. Only 1 1-star, 1 2-star, 5 4-star, and 5 5-star books. 1 poetry, 3 thrillers, 3 nonfiction, 2 sci-fi fantasy, and 3 romance, which is strange. So, into the books. I only DNF'd 1 book this month, Amberlow by Laura Elena Donnelly, which is an adult fantasy, and I was just getting bored. I wasn't into the story. I picked it up because it's supposed to be like, it's like an alternate 20s vibe, but very queer, and I just wasn't feeling it, so. First book I finished was Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. This is my first Riley Sager. I got it through Book of the Month. This follows Jules as she's kind of broke as fuck. She broke up with her boyfriend. She doesn't have anywhere to live. She's staying with a friend, and then she sees this like too good to be true job listing as a house sitter or apartment sitter at this historic famous building in New York, and she gets the job. But as soon as she gets there, things start getting weird. Her downstairs neighbor, like disappears unexpectedly. She's finding out past tenants have disappeared with no trace. There are missing posters for them. So it just follows her trying to figure out what's happening and making sure it doesn't happen to herself. Pros for this book, it's well written, it's super suspenseful, and I love this like trapped feeling because there are so many rules for her employment at this place where she has to be in the apartment overnight. She can't have guests over. So like this slowly isolating, can't escape feeling was great. I didn't figure out the mystery until it was revealed, but cons for this book are that it's clear very, very early on that like some bad shit is happening. So there's no mystery as to whether or not the building or the people in this building are evil. It's just what the evil bit is, if that makes sense. I gave this 4 stars, really enjoyed it. Maybe I'll pick up more Riley Sager in the future. So, book 2 was The List of Shit That Made Me a Feminist by Farida D. And this is a book of poetry. I bought this as an ebook, and it's just a collection of poetry about like being a feminist and misogyny and double standards, sexism, etc. So overall, it was just like an excellent collection, and there are so many poems that resonated with me. I was like screenshotting the whole time I was reading. I posted quite a few of them on my Instagram, and it was just a great collection. I hope everyone buys it. I don't read a lot of poetry, but this one was great. My only cons are that there were a lot of poems like equating sexuality and sexuality in general, and having sex and being sexual and equating that to like personal freedom, and I just like can't relate because I'm ace. So, but obviously it's true for a lot of people, so I didn't dock any stars off for it. It just like, those ones didn't really get to me like the other ones did. Alright. Oh, I gave it 5 stars. Book 3 was The Turn of the Key by Ruth Ware, which is one of my most anticipated releases of the end of this year. I pre-ordered it, and I'm glad I did. This is an adult thriller. Obviously, I own this one. This is about Rowan, who's a nanny at like kind of a shitty preschool type deal, and she wants to do something new. So she sees this ad in the paper for a private nanny with like crazy exorbitant pay. So she applies and manages to get the job. But the house is strange. It's like this old Victorian house with this new like high-tech security system going on with like a lot of ways to interact with like all the technology in the house and with the other residents. And when she gets to this house, she notices strange things. There's like noises in the attic. There's like things going wrong with the technology, lights coming on when they shouldn't be, and not loud noises in the middle of the night, the doorbell ringing. So there's this like slowly mounting tension where at first you're like, okay, sometimes things go wrong, but how many things have to go wrong before you're like, clearly something bad is happening? I was like constantly, these are my pros by the way, constantly formulating new theories and shit for what was happening. And it's like every page I turned, there was a new theory because it didn't work for my old theory, and now there's new information. It was just so many twists and turns. My only con for this book is like a formatting thing, and it's not really a con, it's just bugged me at first. It's written like she's writing letters to a defense attorney, because when we start this book, she is in jail. So it's all in this like her telling this defense lawyer what happened in the hopes that he'll defend her. And in the beginning, that kind of like her telling the story threw me off, but eventually I got used to it and it was so good. I gave it 5 stars. Next up was The Stranger in the Woods by Michael Finkel. I read this book for a book club, so I just listened to the audiobook from my library. Okay, this tells the story of a man who left society in the 80s, I think 1987, and just never came back. He moved into the woods, he set up like camp for himself, and he just never left. He got by like stealing food from nearby cabins and camps, and he just never spoke to anyone again until this one camp set up extra security so they would be able to catch him, and they finally did. So this man who has been alone for 20 some years has been put in prison and is facing felony charges for breaking and entering hundreds of houses over the years. So the book tells his story, but also the author like does some research into like the history of hermits, and my cat is snoring, it's the cutest thing. Anyways, the history of hermits and how being isolated, how society views that and how it's changed over the years. He also talks a little bit about like what's the word? Like atypical mentalities that would cause someone to want to be so isolated from the rest of society. And he talks to people that lived in the area whose houses have been broken into and how they felt about him. It was just like really interesting. My only con for this book is that at some point the journalist just feels really invasive. It's like he gets too into this man's life, and you can tell from the way he's writing that the hermit is bothered by his attention. Like he wants to be left alone. So it just got a little like skeevy there at the end. So I gave it 4 stars. Book 5 was Morning Star by Pierce Brown. I can't say too much about this because it's the 3rd book in the Red Rising trilogy. But holy shit, it was so good. This is an adult sci-fi series. The first book follows Darrow, who lives in this like futuristic society where humanity has been divided into like color castes, where red is like the low of the low and gold is the highest high, and all the colors in between have certain jobs and purposes in their society. So Darrow and the Reds are trying to create an uprising, basically. So I can't tell you anything about the plot of book 3 because it would spoil a bunch of shit before it, but let me tell you that I was emotionally destroyed. I listened to this audiobook. I do have a physical book though. And I was like sitting in my car listening to some of this, and I swear there's a point where we're getting to the end and things are like too happy, too many good things have happened in a row for this book series, and I'm like, some bad shit is going to happen. Someone I love is going to die. Maybe I should just put the book down and pretend everything ends up happy. Because man, I cried in my car. But the end of the book was just so good, and I want you to read it, but also be prepared for emotional destruction. I don't have any cons for this book. I mean, they're really long and sometimes it feels like they don't need to be, but I will take all of the time with these characters that I can get. So can I really call that a con? I don't think so. 5 stars. Book 6 was The Last Sun by Katie Edwards. This is an adult, like, urban fantasy, which is not super common these days. And I read this as a library book and I loved it so much I went out and bought my own copy. Well, I asked for a copy and I got it for my birthday. So this follows like a whole cast of characters, but our main character is Rune St. John, and this world is set up so that these magical beings, they're all kind of based on the tarot, so this is book 1 of the tarot sequence. So the last of the sons, Rune St. John, is hired to look for someone who's missing. A very powerful person wants him found, and we sort of follow that journey, but Rune meets some people along the way, and they become like this whole gang of friends. It's fucking amazing. Like, I love this found family thing, and the magic system is so interesting because these beings are like inherently magical, but in order to harness that magic, they need to like do spells and prepare in advance and store these spells in objects and carry them on them to access them. And once the spell is gone, it's gone. Like, it's just so interesting. And Rune is just so sarcastic and snarky, and I love that shit. Also, we have his BFF, his companion, and this is like a companion bond trope. His buddy Brand is like his companion that was assigned to him at birth, so he's like his bodyguard for life. But what's unusual for their bond is typically it seems like we don't get a lot of looks into other people's bonds, but Rune and Brand are like BFFs. And most other magical people aren't that close with their companions, but I love it. There are just like so many tropes in this book that are my fucking favorites. And I was so upset. I finished this book and I immediately looked for the sequel, and it doesn't come out till December. And it's already been postponed twice, and I will be devastated if it doesn't come out in December. But there are so many tropes in this book that are just my favorites, so here's a few. We've got the companion bonds. We've got a glimmer of soulmates. We've got the only one bed trope. Also, everyone in this book is queer. It's just like normal in this society, and for them, I think he even says at one point that for someone to be 100% hetero or homosexual would be strange. So the potential romance we have going on here is male-male. Also, in this book, we have explicit requests for consent, and I'm into that. My only cons for this book, there are basically no main characters that are women. There are a few side characters, there's a few like satellite characters, references to female characters, but in this like main friend group of 6 people, there's only one woman, and she's like an older maternal figure, which is a little strange, but I still give it 5 stars. I'm fucking obsessed with this book. I cannot wait for the sequel. I feel like I'm gonna reread it even though I just read it, because God, it's just so good. Also, if you want to read this book, you should check out content warnings for it, because the main character has some history with sexual assault, so beware of that. But like literally, I picked this book up because one person suggested it on a queer reading list, and I picked it up on a whim. Like, what would I have done if no one had ever listed this book? How upsetting that I could have not read this book just because of one person. So I hope I'm that one person for you. Next up, Red, White, and Royal Blue by McQuiston. This is an adult romance. This time I listened to the audiobook because it was available, and I was like, why not? I love this book. I'm not going to do a deep dive review on this because it's already in another wrap-up. I'll link it down. Wait, I'll link it up there. I know how to do that now if you want to see it. Book 8, Captive Prince by C.S. Pacat. This is listed as an adult romance, but I don't know. I read it as an ebook, and I bought the 3-book series as a package deal because it was cheaper. And it's about these 2 kingdoms that are at war, and in this one kingdom, I don't remember their names. In this one kingdom, Kingdom 1, the king has died, and the brother of the rightful heir takes over and sends our prince to another kingdom as a slave. And in Kingdom 2, the king died a long time ago, so there's a stand-in king who's the prince's uncle for now, but we have this feeling that the prince's uncle is trying to take over the whole kingdom. And this series is hyped a lot, and I'm very confused about why. I hear this a lot when I look for queer romance recommendations, and it's this book reads like an erotica where we are constantly focused on their relationship and primarily physical relationship, but there's barely any actual sex scenes, so I don't know what people are getting out of that. And then clearly the relationship between these 2 is off to a poor dynamic start, because Damon is sent there as that's his name, sent there as a sex slave. So there's no consent there. And it I don't know, it just really romanticized the sex slaves. Just, I don't get it. If I had known the focus was all in their physical relationship, I wouldn't have read it, because I don't care. So I gave it 1 star. I originally gave it 2 stars, but I went back and changed it because I had thought about it a lot. And I just, I don't get it. It didn't feel like a whole book even, because there was no plot between the beginning and end. And if you have to read 2 more books to get a full plot, that's not a book. I'm just annoyed by the whole thing. Book 9 was The Universe in a Nutshell by Stephen Hawking. This is adult nonfiction about science. And I listened to this on a long drive just to have something to occupy myself. It was very interesting. It's about the universe, but a lot of it went over my head. I don't have a lot to say about this. It was a 4-hour audiobook. It was interesting if you like science. Gave it 4 stars. Book 10 was The Good Daughter by Karin. This is an adult thriller mystery crime. I listened to the audiobook, and it's about this is so complicated. It's about this family and the 2 daughters of a man who's a public defender, and because of his work as a public defender, he's made a lot of enemies in his small town. So when these 2 girls are children, 2 men break into their house, kill their mother, and hurt them. They drag them out to the woods, and we know from the beginning that their plan is to kill them. But we sort of get that story unfolding a step at a time throughout the whole book, while we're also following one of the daughters as an adult who is an attorney and recently got involved in a case of a young girl shooting someone at a school. 2 people. So we're following those 2 timelines. And what I loved about this book is when I pick up a mystery or thriller, I don't expect like some super well developed characters, but these characters were amazing. They were super well rounded. Like by the end of the book, I felt like I knew them. I knew what decisions they would make in certain situations. Like their relationships with each other were so complex. The story was interesting. The mystery was like, I didn't know how it was going to end, but it was really, I keep saying interesting, I have to stop. But it was. My only cons for this book are that there was like a lot of lawyery cop talk because of the professions of the people in this book, and it was very long. I feel like it could have been shorter. The audiobook was almost 18 hours, I think, and that's crazy for something that doesn't require any world building, you know? So 4 stars. Next I read, I didn't actually finish this book this month. Oh well. Book 11 was Top Secret by Sarina Bowen. This is an adult romance. I read this as an ebook. It's about, I struggle to summarize books that I didn't enjoy because I'm like, it's about, who cares? But it follows 2 guys. One of them is with a girl that wants to spice things up in their relationship, so she wants to threesome for her birthday. So her boyfriend downloads an app to find someone local. Think like Grindr or Plenty of Fish. Our other male character, it turns out, is kind of a roommate of our first main character, and he is in the same frat as this guy, and the only reason he's in a frat is because the housing was cheaper than paying for himself, and he's a scholarship student who has to work. So there's a lot of animosity between these two because our scholarship student has a lot of resentment for this guy who doesn't seem to care about anything, and our frat boy is annoyed by how uptight our scholarship kid is. I don't remember their names, so excuse my nicknames. So our frat boy messages someone on this app who turns out to be this roommate of his, and they get to know each other sort of over the app before they know who the other person is, which sounds promising, but it wasn't. So my only pros for this book is that it was kind of funny, and the frat boy is super interested in science, and he had all these like random funny animal facts, and those are my only pros. Cons are that the characters were super underdeveloped, and there wasn't much of a relationship at all. Like there wasn't any chemistry between these 2 characters, and it's like all of their relationship development took place off page and there weren't any scenes of it. If you took out the sex scenes in this book, it wouldn't even be a book. Like their only interactions were sexual and the rest of it was just like one sentence. We talked all night. Like that's not a story. That's not a relationship. Ugh. Gave it 2 stars. Maybe I should give it 1 star. I don't know. It wasn't offensive, so fine. 2 stars. Book 12 was This Will Only Hurt a Little by Busy Phillips. This is an adult memoir. Busy Phillips is an actress. She was in Dawson's Creek for several seasons. She was in Freaks and Geeks and Cougar Town. I didn't watch any of those shows, but this audiobook was available and I heard it was really funny, so I gave it a shot. It just follows her early life, her childhood, her relationship with her family, and then getting into acting, screenwriting, and then her current life. Pros of this book is that it was super transparent. She goes deep. She doesn't cut out the hard parts of her life or the shitty things she did. It was also super funny. She's really great. She narrates the audiobook herself, and she's really great at comedic timing and all that. Just good stuff. And was very honest, as far as I know. My only cons with this book are that there were some parts that, like, there were certain phrases that she must really like because she used them over and over. Like, to this day, she must have said 50 times. And then the certain words, like unusual words that she used over and over, I can't think of any examples, but it bugged me a little bit. So I ended up giving this 4 stars, but I definitely recommend it if you like audiobook memoirs. I held this up in my stack, but I didn't actually finish it until September, so I'm not talking about it now. Sorry if you were looking forward to that. Alright, I post book-related videos every Wednesday, so if you want to see more, subscribe. If you like this video, hit like. If you want to keep talking, you can find me on Twitter at Kelsey Reads, Instagram at Kelsey Reads, or Goodreads at Kelsey Lynn Reads. Otherwise, I'll see you next week.